a U.S. official has confirmed to the Associated Press that Ukraine has received its first F-16 fighter jets. Bloomberg was the first media outlet to publicly announce the arrival of the aircraft. A Ukrainian legislator also confirmed that Ukraine had received a limited number of F-16 fighter jets. Since they were not authorized to discuss the matter publicly, the two officials spoke with the Associated Press on the condition of remaining anonymous. NATO member countries, Belgium, Denmark, the Netherlands, and Norway, have announced their intention to supply Ukraine with more than 60 planes. Despite Ukraine's air defenses being able to hold off the Russian combat aircraft fleet to some extent, the Russian fleet is still estimated to be about 10 times larger. According to Ukrainian officials, the country needs a minimum of 130 F-16s to counter the strength of the Russian Air Force. It is crucial to have a sufficient number of pilots who are currently being trained by a coalition of countries, including the United States. This coalition has also committed to equipping the Ukrainian aircraft with sophisticated missiles and bombs. Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that Russian forces have made advances in eastern Ukraine because Kyiv's allies have restricted the use of Western-supplied weaponry, and Kyiv's forces are still awaiting military shipments from other countries. According to a study conducted by Agence France-Presse using data from the US-based Institute for the Study of War, ISW, Russia was able to consolidate its gains in eastern Ukraine in July, capturing control of approximately 200 square kilometers, or 77 square miles. Zelensky stated that Kyiv was working hard to obtain permission to strike targets deep within Russian territory using weapons supplied by the West. The unfortunate reality is that our partners remain terrified of this. In an interview with French media, including Agence France-Presse, Zelensky said that the upcoming US presidential elections pose a challenge for the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. "We cannot influence any election," said the Ukrainian president. "The United States of America is undoubtedly a challenge at present. Moreover, there are dangers that probably none of us can anticipate." Zelensky emphasized that, as president of Ukraine, it is imperative to have discussions with his team, as well as with the teams of Biden, Trump, and Harris, who are currently in office. "We are obligated to engage in all these contacts and discussions about what our future might look like if one of the two parties wins the election," he said. According to Zelensky, Ukraine does not want China to act as a mediator, but rather wants China to exert pressure and force Russia to stop the war it is currently engaged in. Just as the United States and the European Union press each other, as a country's level of influence increases, so should the amount of pressure it exerts on Russia. Zelensky stated that Ukraine and the rest of the world are eagerly awaiting Russia's participation in the upcoming peace summit. Zelensky has already hinted that Moscow should be represented at a second summit tentatively planned for this year. This is in response to the Swiss summit held in June, where there was no Russian participation. There is a consensus among most people worldwide that Russia should be represented at the second summit. Zelensky said on Tuesday, "We cannot be opposed at this moment because the entire world wants them at the table." China has announced that it will ban the export of certain drone components and prohibit the export of any unregulated civilian drones that have the potential to be used for terrorist or military purposes. For example, the Ministry of Commerce said that high-precision inertial measurement equipment, as well as infrared and laser technologies for target indication, would be included on a list of items subject to export controls. China's allowance of drone deliveries to Russia and its alleged collaboration with Russia in drone development has made China a target of criticism. According to Denis Shmyhal, Prime Minister of Ukraine, the restrictions imposed by Ukraine prohibiting the transport of oil from the Russian producer Lukoil do not pose a threat to Slovakia's energy security. Shmyhal stated that the lifting of sanctions was not a topic for discussion and that Kyiv had the full understanding of the EU on the matter. If Ukraine does not resume Lukoil oil flows through the pipeline located in Slovak territory, pro-Russian Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico has stated that his nation will stop supplying diesel to Ukraine. Slovakia and Hungary are responsible for approximately 10% of Ukraine's diesel supply. Shmihal asserted in his statement that Slovakia is a trustworthy partner from which no threats or blackmail are expected. The Ukrainian government has invoked legislation allowing it to avoid making payments on its international debt while finalizing a restructuring plan agreed upon with bondholders to reduce its international loans by $20 billion. Although it is officially considered another default for Ukraine, it is doubtful that it will cause problems in the financial markets. The restructuring will result in a reduction of 1/3 of the nominal value of Ukraine's international debt. However, the country's finances will continue to face significant stress. In protest against the treason charges, Moldova expelled a Russian diplomat and summoned an envoy. After detaining 2 Moldovan officials earlier this week on suspicions of treason and conspiracy, Moldova announced on Thursday that it had expelled a Russian diplomat and called in the Russian ambassador to make a formal complaint. This came after the detention of the 2 officials. A Moldovan security source told Reuters that the 2 individuals were detained on suspicion of providing information to the defense attaché at the Russian embassy. This is the latest setback in the strained diplomatic relations between the 2 nations. According to a statement issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, information and evidence were obtained showing that a Russian diplomat was engaged in activities in Moldova incompatible with his diplomatic status. Oleg Vasnetsov, the Russian ambassador to Chisinau, told the press that Moscow viewed the expulsion of its diplomats as unfriendly and that Russia would respond to Moldova's actions on Thursday. Moscow has expressed disapproval of the new treason and conspiracy case presented by Moldova on Wednesday, referring to it as another manifestation of artificially fostered anti-Russian sentiments in Moldova. Chisinau has taken a pro-European stance and accused Moscow of attempting to destabilize it, leading to a significant deterioration in relations between Russia and the small former Soviet republic situated between Ukraine and NATO member Romania. There have been deliveries of F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. However, what kind of influence can they really have? The F-16, a famous fighter aircraft manufactured in the United States, has been the frontline combat aircraft of choice for NATO and several air forces around the world for half a century. Washington officials have acknowledged that Western nations have committed to providing Kyiv with F-16s, and some of these aircraft have already arrived in Ukraine. It is expected that the fighter jets will begin flying missions in Ukrainian skies in the near future. This would provide a much-needed boost to the country's current fleet of Soviet-era fighters, which are now used to combat the Russian invasion. On Tuesday, the Ukrainian military announced that it had successfully attacked a Russian oil depot located in the city of Bozhi in the Kursk region. The General Staff reported that the depot was targeted in a joint operation by the Security Service of Ukraine, SBU, and other forces. According to the acting governor of the Kursk region, a missile attack occurred. 3 tanks were set on fire as a result of a Ukrainian army attack on the Polovaya oil depot in the Kursk region on Sunday.